Good night. I have now been your Prime Minister for over 6 years. Above all, it has been a great honor. And later this year, when we face elections, it might turn out that this New Year's speech is my last. So let me be a bit more straightforward this evening, both in a political and personal sense. I became a Social Democrat because I believe in justice. And I became Prime Minister because I believe we can make this fantastic country even better. I have done my best for that, but at the same time, the period turned out to be entirely different from what I imagined. First came the pandemic, then war returned to Europe, and now yet again the issue of Greenland and the Kingdom. I believe these crises have influenced all of us, including me, and made me significantly stronger. Not entirely. However, during discussions, I observed the shift even in the visual aspects. Some of the critiques directed at me are well-deserved, and I take it to heart. I have been focused on collaborating through Denmark and Europe as one through challenging times. But along the way, I have not always truly listened to you and to you personally. We have not done enough. When it comes to the rising food prices, we haven't done enough about increasing inequality, and we haven't done enough for the children and young people who are struggling. This needs to change, and this responsibility is mine. So, first to you, parents and grandparents watching tonight. We probably all know a child or a young person who is not doing well, a child whose childhood is weighed down by anxiety, struggles with school, distress, or a lack of self-belief and hope for life. And though most children and young people in Denmark fortunately lead good and happy lives, they see a world that opens in front of their eyes, and they have dreams and they have hopes for the future. But far too many children and families are struggling, battling darkness, whether within or in the experience of fighting against the system. In other words, there are too many who are left alone in a tough situation. What can parents do when they courageously go to work, giving their all but constantly worrying? Will there be yet another call from the school today? A teen possibly staying alone at home too often, missing a supportive physical social circle, disputes over screen use, phones, and the consuming effect of social media, failed inclusion from traditional schooling models. Many of you are under immense pressure, and as a society, we need to face this together. We are in the process of changing our schools, and we are working to strengthen mental health care. More young people now have part-time jobs, and I think we all know there isn't a single solution and that we each have a responsibility. Some entities, however, are currently robbing our children of their childhood, the technology giants. I firmly think they must face stricter regulations, while owners of these social media platforms, who have amassed millions, if not billions, at the cost of others, particularly our younger generations, need to take responsibility. It's time they start contributing back, ensuring their massive wealth benefits child welfare across Europe and even beyond. This is the work I'd like to lead. As someone born in the 1970s, I recall a time devoid of smartphones and platforms like social media. Yet those days were marked by their own challenges, with rampant unemployment and an unstable economy. It was back when John Mogensen sang that there was something wrong in Denmark. Just sign the drawing, boy, it's fine. Then you can get things the way you want. I wonder what he would have said if he were alive today. For even though Denmark is clearly both a better and richer society, and even though we live longer and significantly more people have received good schooling and education, inequality has also grown. This is a development that, as Prime Minister, I have tried to counter. We have introduced an early retirement right for you who have had the longest and hardest working lives. We have given a pay raise to you, especially in the female-dominated professions, who work with our children, our elderly, and our sick. We have raised the senior citizens allowance. We have made the unemployment benefit system more supportive for Danish workers. We have helped thousands move from welfare to the labor market. We have fought against housing speculators and significantly increased the funding for our shared welfare. But we haven't done enough because something is wrong when families with typical incomes struggle to find an affordable apartment in Copenhagen, while in other areas of the country, people can barely get a loan for a single family home. And something is wrong when some people have become wealthy just because they live in the right place, while others struggle to stretch their money when shopping at the supermarket. And something feels incorrect when some retire early, while the majority face a continuously increasing retirement age. I don't believe everyone should be the same, but in my opinion, Denmark is too small for such great disparities, even when it comes to healthcare. For years, it's been the case that there are the fewest doctors in the areas with the highest rates of illness. It should actually be the opposite, and that's changing now. More doctors are coming to Vendsyssel and Lolland. And to those of you living with a chronic illness, such as COPD or heart disease, diabetes, you can now finally look forward to more cohesive care. Now it's your turn to be prioritized. And when it comes to cancer, more assistance is now on the way for you who have fortunately survived the disease but may struggle with after effects. Can you remember the healthcare policies from a few years ago? There were long waiting times at hospitals, and we lacked both nurses and midwives. We've addressed that. However, assistance is still notably absent in one area for those battling one of the most relentless diseases, dementia. At first you begin to forget, then behavior may change, and eventually the person becomes unrecognizable. Being close to someone who disappears before your eyes is unbearable, and many of us have experienced it. Memories are mine to keep, sings Liverwheel so beautifully, but that's only a small comfort for you as a relative. And even though medical science hasn't yet found a way to cure dementia, we must get much better at detecting the disease earlier, preventing it, alleviating it, and recognizing the person still there behind it. And we can provide more help, more support for you as a family member. This is encompassed in the National Dementia Plan, set to be revealed by the government in the new year. Additionally, we are establishing the inaugural National Research Center focusing on women's health. We're doing this because women's health issues have unfortunately been neglected for too many years. We will change that. And we will consider how we can better support you who face discomfort or injuries after childbirth. In our society and healthcare system, there seems to have been a somewhat antiquated perspective that women should endure pain and resort to a couple of paracetamols. Postpartum injuries deserve serious attention and proper treatment, a basic necessity. Political actions can still bring impactful change, even when introduced by an unconventional government. I don't regret forming a government across the political center 3 years ago. Amidst a world filled with divisions and unrest, we made the choice to collaborate and unite. It's clearly not benefited us as parties. That said, I have no doubt it has benefited Denmark, which is what ultimately holds the greatest importance. Tonight, I urge parties at Christiansborg to strive for more harmony, particularly on vital issues like food prices. We cannot control global commodity prices, but we can mitigate some of the consequences. Notice your next paycheck or your payment or your electricity bill, where the tax will soon disappear. Thanks to good agreements, the wage increase, the pension increase, and tax relief, which benefit, among others, single mothers and fathers, most Danes will have more money at their disposal this year. Even after buying dinner or school lunch for the kids, there could still be discussions about parenting, but it is still too expensive to shop, and unfortunately this hits you the hardest. Danes who already have little money and struggle to make ends meet. I said earlier that we haven't done enough to address high food prices, and now the government will propose introducing a food subsidy this year. It will go to, among others, pensioners who don't have large savings, to those without a job, and to families with children who have low incomes. It will simply be a cash transfer. It will help you afford more at the supermarket, but it won't bring prices down, which is why in the new economic plan presented this year, the government will also allocate money to lower VAT, either making groceries slightly cheaper in general or removing VAT on fruits and vegetables. We are now beginning negotiations with parliamentary parties about this. Another proposal we will bring forth this year is an expulsion reform, aiming to deport an even larger number of criminal foreigners from Denmark. But let me first say this. To those of you who have arrived here and wholeheartedly adopted Denmark as your home, and to those of you who we need in our society, you can still be Danish. Even if your favourite food isn't meatballs or mackerel sandwiches, we Danes come in different forms, and that's perfectly fine. However, mutual respect and harmonious coexistence are key. In Denmark, democracy always takes precedence over religion in case of conflict, so religion must always stand aside for democracy. This is why, to those committing crimes here, can't be deported, or why a former convicted man from Kosovo who was sentenced for years of abuse against his children and spouse is allowed to remain here. The government therefore proposes that foreigners in the future be deported if they commit serious crimes and are sentenced to at least 1 year in prison. And this will apply regardless of their ties to Denmark, making it a clear principle that if someone is convicted of, for example, rape or severe assault or another form of what we call serious crime, then they lose the right to stay here in Denmark. Thanks to a strict Danish immigration policy and where we already push the boundaries of the conventions, we are already deporting many of the foreigners who unfortunately have come here and commit crimes. The reason we can now go further is that before Christmas, Denmark, together with Italy, managed to gain support from 27 countries for a new interpretation of the European Convention on Human Rights. From now on, it must primarily be the population and victims who are protected, not the perpetrators. Rather than waiting years for this to influence legal procedures, Denmark will take charge by instituting legislation before the summer. This evening, my speech hasn't focused on foreign policy. It could very well have been. But you know my analysis, and you know where I and the government stand. We are strongly committed to enhancing Denmark's defence and emergency readiness. Never before have we rearmed so significantly and so quickly, and naturally we continue supporting Ukraine. For some it may still seem like a distant conflict, very far away, but everything is interconnected. If a nation collapses, it paves the way for Russia to push further into Europe. We are also working to strengthen security in the Arctic. The kingdom is large in geography and small in population, and over the past year, we've had to endure much talk, menacing statements, intense emotions, and condescending speech, even from some of our closest lifelong allies, talking about wanting to take over another land and another people, as if it were something one could buy and own. That has no place here. We are fulfilling our responsibilities in the world, and it is not us who will seek out conflict, but let no one doubt. Regardless of what happens, we will stand firm on what is right and what is wrong. I fully understand if one enters the new year without much optimism for the sake of the world. It feels as though hope is deeply buried nowadays, yet perhaps we don't need to search much. Perhaps it lies just before us.